Hello. It's a lovely January morning, and a friend recently told me about a mysterious building that I'd never heard of before, despite living in the area for some time. We're in Leicestershire, close to Mount St Bernard's Abbey Monastery, on Oaks Road near Whitwick, and so somewhere over to the left is Gun House. Though finding it will be tricky, even with the drone. It's not visible from the road and it's surrounded by private land, so exploring on foot isn't an option. All sorts of rumours prevail about this building. Some say that it's haunted. Some say that there are tunnels leading from it to the monastery. Let's have a look and see what we can find out. On the map you can see the village of Whitwick on the lower left hand side of the screen, and the monastery Mount St Bernard Abbey on the lower right hand side of the screen. Gun House is in the centre as indicated with the arrows. Thinking that the drone would make short work of locating the house, I started flying to where I thought the location was. In the distance there you can see on the top right the steam from the cooling towers at Ratcliffe Power Station, but much closer I imagined it was in this copse of trees in front of us, but nothing was jumping out at me. The house is something of a mystery. There are a few accounts of it, and those that exist seem to be incomplete. Locally, it seems to have a reputation for being haunted. And based on what I see, or rather don't see, it certainly seems to have the capability to dematerialise. Let's climb a little to see if that helps. The ridgeline on which the house stands is called High Sharpley. It's made up of rock crags rising to around 6 metres above the surrounding land. This is one of the higher points in Leicestershire, and it does afford us quite a nice view of a Blackbrook reservoir in the distance. We see the dam which forms the reservoir. Well, that's one battery down and still no luck finding the house. So we're flying back again towards High Sharpley whilst climbing and shortly zooming in. The first article on the house which I came across recounts the memories of a lady who used to live in it for a few months as a child. She and her family heard strange sounds whilst living there. In the article she mentions the haunting. The story has it that a neglected and unhappy wife of a local lord who was in the habit of straying from the marital bed went to the house on a regular basis, where she interacted with other people. She became so unhappy, unfortunately, that she drowned herself in a pool at the bottom of Sharpley Rocks, presumably now where Blackbrook Reservoir currently is. Climbing again, we catch sight of a promising shape in the trees, so we'll move in for a closer look. And finally, there it is, a small tower poking through the trees. What a strange place. Tiny, yet somehow imposing. It does have a vaguely sinister appearance, set into the rock outcrop behind it. Clearly the structure has seen better days. The roofs are gone, as are the windows and the doors. And strangely, there seems to be no discernible path to the structure. No access either by foot or for wheeled transport, such as a horse and cart or a car. Looking at it, you can't help wondering what it's seen over the years, what happenings have been going on in there or otherwise. As we pull away, it seems to blend into the trees again. It's quite a strange effect. Here we close in on it with Blackbrook in the distance. It just seems to materialise out of the trees. All very strange. Let's have a look around and orbit the structure and see whether anything becomes apparent from the other side. As we move around the building, it's obviously got nothing to hide. It literally just looks as though it's built onto that rock face. I'm presuming it doesn't go into the rock face. It does beg the question whether there's tunnels behind it. but presumably that would have been mentioned in the articles if that were the case. As we zoom in, you can certainly see why this building has gained a reputation for the paranormal. Imagine it at night, in a storm. You're alone with your imagination running wild. In the second article on the house, its possible use as a hunting lodge is mentioned. It is described as having one bedroom in the tower, directly above the kitchen/living room, with a scullery and pantry on the left and a small parlour on the right. This description does sound more like a hunting lodge, or a keeper's lodge, as the article states. It is thought to have been constructed around 1835, but to my eyes it does look older. As the camera sweeps up and pans right, we can see Blackbrook at the foot of the hill. And as we continue to the right, we'll see the bell tower of Mount St. Bernard's Abbey on the upper left. In the first article, the main protagonist, a lady called Elaine, mentions her sister Erica finding tunnels linking the house with the monastery. Let's briefly look at Mount St. Bernard's. This monastery is actually quite stunning. It's very impressive in a sort of Gothic way, and it can be visited. The gates close around 7 p.m, but they do a nice line of Trappist ale. So anybody who fancies a tipple, if you're nearby, it's worth picking some up from there. As you can see now to the right, as we swing around the car park of the monastery, the ground does rise. So I suppose it's entirely possible that tunnels could have been created in between the two, but there's something of a massive distance there between them. Flying along the approximate path that you would presume any tunnel would take, the distance between the two places becomes apparent. It's over 2,900 feet, and the terrain is littered with rock outcrops, so any tunnelling would have been a major undertaking. The area directly to the left of the monastery, where you can see the statue, is called Calvary, and in essence it is one large rock outcrop. As we sweep across, you can see the extent of what would be required. Of course, it is possible. Many escape routes were created from places of religion, lessons having been learnt from Henry VIII's dissolution of monasteries, convents and priories from 1536 onwards. Similarly, many nobles prepared escape routes from their residences, just in case they fell foul of whoever happened to be in charge at the time. Much of this, though, happened further back in history, and the comparative recency of these two structures would have required a large degree of paranoia to justify such an undertaking. Just have a look at the distances that are involved. What isn't immediately apparent from this height is the degree to which the terrain undulates. As we move away from the monastery, the terrain drops down to well below the level of the monastery before climbing higher again towards High Sharpley, in essence meaning that any tunnel that was dug would initially have to descend relatively steeply before levelling off and then climbing again to the location of Gun Hill House. Another factor is the level of tree coverage. This would have made digging any shallow tunnels quite a difficult enterprise, as the root structure would have interfered with anything that was just below the surface. Here we can see just how challenging the ground would have been to tunnel. These rocks extend below the surface to considerable depth. This is why the area is littered with quarries. The granite is quite valuable. These volcanic remnants date back millions of years and make arable farming difficult, never mind tunnelling. It would be interesting to explore the area on foot. That way we could probably get a more realistic idea of whether any tunnels are there or whether it would have been feasible. However, since the area is on private land and seems to be completely closed off, that's not an option, unfortunately. If you've enjoyed this short film and the exploration of Gun Hill House and its surroundings, please consider hitting the like and subscribe buttons for more content. Thank you for watching.